So after today's meeting, I'll send out this recording. So if you had any colleagues who are hoping to jump on, you'll still have the opportunity to see what we covered today. So good morning and good afternoon for all the folks who are joining us. This is Mike Rooney from Lovelytics, and today we're talking about the spatial and geospatial capabilities inside Alteryx. So without further ado, a little bit about us. So Lovelytics, we are based in Washington, DC. We're a data analytics services firm. We're specifically an Alteryx services partner. So we work with customers across the US and Canada. You know, in some verticals that we are particularly deep on would be media, retail, and financial services. But if you think about some of the other areas that we also specialize in, right, outside of Alteryx, a lot of complementary technologies, right, that you will be familiar with, whether it's Tableau or Snowflake or Mapbox or Google. A little bit about me. So I am, of course, going through the slide deck today. We are, a firm that it really prides itself on being certified with the partner technology organizations that we work with. So I am in with, of course, Alteryx, but Tableau and Snowflake as well. So of course, right, if you have questions about the ancillary technologies that complement Alteryx, by all means, don't ever hesitate to reach out. More importantly, my technical partner in crime, maybe it's a bad way of putting it, considering he says that he is Batman and Alteryx is his Batmobile, but Amar Danthala, he is the head of Alteryx Solutions here at Lovelytics. I think you can see from his slide that he has pretty much all of the certifications, whether it is product-based or function-based. So again, he's a great resource to lean into if you have any questions. He is, of course, right prior to Lovelytics, was using Alteryx in industry when he worked at Comcast. And then he's also just a great resource to connect you with the other community members, as he's the head of the Toronto user group and also formerly one of the leaders of the Philadelphia user group. So in case like Alteryx is brand spanking new for anybody on the call today, it really is the quickest implement analytics platform for your organization, right? And bridging the gap between those who are incredibly data savvy into the data science world, but also, right, those folks who are reporting or working on business analytics, right, in their seat, helping them solve the problems, right, faster, than the speed of business typically allows you to. And these are just some high level stats in terms of, right, market research responses for the need for data analytics. And when we think about Alteryx, for the most part, people think, hey, prep and blend, right? I'm connecting to disparate data sources, I'm normalizing them and helping them, right, ultimately get to, right, the people who need to act on the data in the organization. So, right, you could be acting as a liaison, or you could be, somebody sitting in one of these particular parts of the business who has a question based on data, is looking to, right, solve the problem, pulling the data from different areas and ultimately looking to analyze it at the level of detail needed. Now, I think what we're really trying to highlight today is, right, of course, the APA platform can be broken into 5 key areas. So, right, thinking about one, ingestion, profiling, adding on prescriptive analytics or data science, right, if you're working with any machine learning algorithms, and also, right, outputting it to, hey, I'm migrating this from, a couple of source systems to a new data warehouse. I'm looking to analyze this data, in a BI platform, or, right, I'm sending this off to stakeholders themselves. And today, I'm just putting the emphasis on the fact that we will be talking really specifically about the geospatial analytic capabilities within Alteryx and also the other products that Alteryx provides. And just for, one housekeeping item, right, if you have questions, please toss them in the Q&A chat. We will, of course, right, try to answer them in time, but also leave time at the end so that you have an opportunity if you want to fully flesh something out for us. And, at a high level, right, what does Alteryx enable for spatial analysis? So I think first and foremost, we're going to demonstrate the built-in spatial analytics tools, right? The ones that are right there in Alteryx Designer that you're able to get started with quickly, right? If you're looking to analyze distance, if you are making trade areas, if you're trying to, right, manipulate polygon objects, if you're looking at spatial matching. And then, right, thinking about, all right, so what happens, after Alteryx, or what complements Alteryx in this spatial analysis endeavor? So we're going to be talking a little bit about, right, the different data visualization tools or GIS systems that complement it, right? So if you're looking at output to, Tableau, Power BI, you're thinking about what types of ways you can enable, right, all users based on the data that you're working with in Alteryx. And as well, right, thinking about, hey, if we're storing this for ongoing analysis, definitely, being able to port that data over to a data warehouse with the spatially enriched results that you've used. So that way, hey, this is something that can continue to be reused, amended, and updated on an ongoing basis. And we will be touching on the data packages that another suite of products that Alteryx sells. So I think that this will be particularly interesting in one of the demos that Amar goes over today, right? How can we enrich, right, our data sets, right, to get a really better understanding of how to serve our customers based on where they are geographically, right? And how well can we understand and clean, right, the addresses, right, to improve data quality, and ultimately, right, things in terms of one, meeting SLAs, finding opportunities for increased revenue, right? How can we augment the data that we have today with data out there from these trusted providers? So we'll be talking about that as well as the consumer insights. So you'll probably see a couple of, and be familiar with some of these partners of Alteryx, of course, Mapbox, when we're thinking about specifically, right, mapping analytics software that you can overlay within Alteryx, and then the four on the right, so Dun Bradstreet, Experian, TomTom, and the US Census. Those are data providers that Alteryx provides through their third-party data packages. And one note just on the US Census data. So the government is not always the fastest actor when it comes to providing new and updated data, but the 2020 census data will be available in November of 2021. Typically, the other providers, they update every quarter. So for instance, Experian, the SLA is at 6 to 8 weeks. After quarter end, they provide new and updated data. So we'll definitely be sharing the links so you can find, and learn a little bit more based on what we show today. And certainly last and not least, but the Spatial Analytics Starter Kit is a really valuable guide for getting started with using spatial analytics inside Alteryx. So this is complimentary. You can find this on the website. We'll be sure to link it in our follow-up. But as you look into, right, either of these three areas is ways to get started, enriching as well as using that data in your analyses, then you'll have just some really helpful guides for practically getting going in those directions. And last but not least, I'll stop sharing, but we're going to get jumping into Alteryx Designer. And Amar has a couple of great things to share with you today. Like I said, I will be monitoring the chat window, and right, if we answer something in real time, then just mark it that way. But of course, right, if you have a really meaty question, by all means, we'll make sure to pause and save some time at the end to answer that. So thank you. And Amar, I'll hand it off to you.
Thanks, Mike. I'll share my screen, and if you can confirm. Do you see my Alteryx window?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thanks again. And hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this webinar. Let's directly jump into the demo. And as Mike mentioned, Alteryx enables you with spatial analytics right out of the box, and it can open up a whole new world of insight for you and your organization. Today, my agenda is to showcase a couple of use cases that can get you thinking about Alteryx and its spatial capabilities. Before I go to my first use case, I just quickly, for any of you who might be new to Alteryx, I'll just give a quick rundown of the interface. So Alteryx is an AI-enabled ETL tool. And it is primarily broken down into 4 different categories. Like the interface is broken down into 4 different categories. Up top, you have the tool palette. We have around 260 different tools which you can use to start creating your workflows. And a workflow is nothing but an analytical solution built using these combination of tools. This white section here is nothing but the canvas. You drag and drop tools onto the canvas to build your workflow. And once you have your workflow, you use this run button to run the workflow. And your workflow results can be seen on this bottom window here. As soon as I click on any of the tool, all the results after the tool has performed its transformation can be seen here on this results window. And every single tool has to be configured in Alteryx, and you can configure these tools using the configuration window. If you notice, every tool has a different configuration. And as and when I click on these tools, you would see this configuration window changes. You get the idea. So I'll just quickly move on to the first use case. So in my first use case example, I have a couple of lat long coordinates, and I want to find the zip codes that these coordinates fall under. So let's look at this workflow. So a quick rule of thumb for performing spatial analytics in Alteryx is that your data should have a spatial object. And for our use case, we need to create spatial objects using our data and then perform a spatial match so we can match the coordinates with their zip codes. And here is one way of doing it. And with Alteryx, there are always more than 2 ways to solve for a solution. And this is my approach. So I begin by loading my input data set using the input data tool. And my data, as you can see, has the lat long coordinates along with state and country information. I'm then filtering the data that is only for the United States to keep it simple and easy. I then move on to creating the spatial object. And to do that, I'm using the create points tool from the spatial tool palette. And this is the spatial tool palette in Alteryx. And we have around 15 different spatial tools. So if you look at the configuration window, the create point tool takes the lat long data as input and outputs a spatial object, or in this case, it's a spatial point. If you look at the browse tool, we can now see the results of our spatial encoding. So these are nothing but different points in the United States. And from here, I now move on to doing the spatial match. I'm using the Alteryx location and sites data package along with the allocate tool of the demographics tool palette. So we have around 4 different tools in the demographics tool palette. I'm using one of the tools. And this tool has the US census data package loaded onto it. And the location insights data package is an add-on along with the Alteryx designer. So in combination of all of these things, I'm able to get all the zip codes for the United States, and I'm performing a spatial match using the spatial match tool. I configure this tool in such a way that it outputs all the zip codes where the previously created spatial points fall within that zip code. And finally, I'm using a select tool to remove some of the unwanted fields from the data package and writing back to an Excel file. But in Alteryx, you can write to around 35 different outputs. And So here are all the different outputs that Alteryx supports. You have around 30 different outputs. So again, you can write back to different data sources as well. So any questions so far? If not, then I would like to move on to the second use case.
And I think no questions as of yet, but again, folks, if you do have anything, by all means, please feel free to toss it in the Q&A, but we'll save some time at the end.
Okay, great. So in this second use case, I want you all to imagine a retail company which is trying to incorporate locational intelligence. They're trying to understand the, let's say, customer demographics within a certain drive time radius around different store locations for revamping their marketing efforts. And this generally or widely is known as the proximity targeting that most businesses do, most retail businesses do. And using the business insights data package from Alteryx, they can understand customer demographics, gauge drive time traffic, and do much more. You can also create trade areas that open up a whole new level of analysis. And you can also design an in-depth view that you might need for a successful marketing campaign. So a quick note on the business insights package. You get access to standard demographics data with around 3,500 different variables. You also get behavioral and retail purchasing information. This is using the partner Experian. They provide the mosaic and other consumer behavioral information in the data set. You can also create drive time polygons. You can process different areas based on this demographic data, so on and so forth. And this package enables businesses to perform in-depth analysis. And if you look at the number of customer stories on the Alteryx community, I feel that this package has a lot of value. All right, so jumping into the use case itself, here is how the process looks like in Alteryx. So in my input, I just have 3 rows of data, which is I have addresses of 3 different retail stores. And then using the geocoder tool from the address tool palette, I'm geocoding spatial objects into my dataset. So using the select tool from the data preparation tool palette, once again, different tools from different tool palettes, and most of you might be aware of the data preparation tool palette. And using the select tool, I remove all the unwanted fields and only keep those that I might require for my analysis. Some of the CASS information I do not need, so as long as I have latitude, longitude, state, zip, etc., I can move on with my analysis. I'm then using the Mapbox tools to draw drive time isochrones around my store locations. The isochrone tool takes the latitude and longitude information as input and also provides us with the options to configure different travel modes. In this case, I have driving, walking, or cycling. You can also configure distances. You can also configure the minutes of travel, which I'm doing here. I can also configure the total number of isochrone rings that I want to be drawn around my data points. So in this case, for each store, I'll have 3 different isochrone rings. And the tool is clever enough to determine what is the minutes of travel it requires. So if the first isochrone is only for 5 minutes of travel, then the next is for 10 minutes and the next is for 5 minutes. So it does the increments of what your original input is. So in this case, it's an increment of 5. So in case you don't know what an isochrone is a travel time map that can be drawn around a spatial point. I'll show you in a quick second what that looks like, and it'll make much more sense. And a quick note on Mapbox, in case you are not aware of Mapbox, they are a location data platform that powers the maps and location services. The Mapbox macros for Alteryx, it allows any of the users who have a Mapbox account to access highly accurate location data right out of the box. And to configure these Mapbox macros, you do not require any data downloads. There is no complicated setup. As you can see, it ships right out of the box, and it's a part of the spatial tool palette. All right. From here, what I'm doing is I'm using a Calgary database to load the Business Insights data package. And the Business Insights data package has a couple of data sets that you can use in your analysis. Here is the list. So you get Calibrate, Experian, DNB, TomTom, etc. But because we need some information related to demographics and businesses, I think I'll go ahead and use the Experian data set so that I can load the customer demographics data. I then, similar to our first use case, I then perform a spatial match, meaning I'm trying to match all the customers that fall within the drive time radius that I'm interested in. So this tool will also take the isochrone spatial objects as an input. And so technically, the spatial match tool is nothing but it tries to match two different spatial objects, be it spatial points, spatial polygons, spatial objects, isochrones, trade areas, whatever it is, as long as it's a spatial object. And to further expand my analysis, I can add some more context to my data using the 3,500 different variables that are available. So in this case, I chose to segment my data based on Mosaic. It's a standard that describes American consumers. And this will all make, a lot of sense when you look at the final output or the final visualization. And if you look at the data, so you have Mosaic households, I have only selected a couple of different variables that I'm interested in, but it's up to you. And Alteryx provides a detailed Excel sheet on the different variables available and the data dictionary for all those variables. But here we are using Mosaic grouping because it's a household-based lifestyle segmentation, and that classifies all the US households, and I was into, I guess, 70 or 75 different unique types. There are 19 different overarching groups in total. And here I'm filtering for 9 different groups that I'm interested in. If you look at my configuration window, I'm just writing a small condition that filters for those 9 groups. And I'm finally outputting this transform data set as if you look at my extension, as a hyper file so that I can visualize my data. So here in this case, it is .hyper. And just so that I don't, there is one option in Alteryx where you can disable all the tools that write output. So for this webinar, even if I'm accidentally running these workflows, I don't want to overwrite my data sources. So I can simply check this option, and across the interface, no matter how many windows you have open, it will disable all the tools that write the output. So this is what the end result looks like. So on this dashboard, we are looking at different customer Mosaic groups that are within a certain travel distance from our potential store location. Towards my upper left, I have a filter which I can use to change my potential store location. In this case, I'm saying downtown. It can be outskirts, or it can also be suburbs. So this border, whatever you're seeing across the map, is nothing but an isochrone. So this is a map which has around 15 minutes of drive time. And this is an isochrone. Isochrone is nothing but a map with a drive time radius. So I can change the radius and my isochrone keeps updating. So the star is my potential location. So from my potential location, what does a 5-minute drive time radius look like? What does 10-minute look like? And what does 15-minute look like? And what are the different customer demographics across the store within this 15-minute drive time radius? And these are the 9 different groupings that we created or filtered in Alteryx using the Experience data package. I can also filter for a single customer group. And based on all these filters and inputs, the rest of the dashboard gives me some insight into what is the household composition, what is the age distribution, household income distribution, etc. I mean, to expand this further, we can also look at walking or cycling distances. This can add a lot of value in case, the retail location ends up choosing Philly downtown as their potential store location. I want to emphasize on something really quick. The data packages, I mean, as you've seen, we just started with 3 data points or 3 records, and we ended up with almost 3 million different data points. It's a lot of data that we're bringing in, analyzing and transforming it using the Business Insights data package. I didn't have to bring data from any third parties, wait for any licensing, run into any licensing issues, etc. Again, all of this information is compatible. You can perform or use all the spatial tools on top of these data packages. So I mean, from 3 to 3 million, I think we have a very good insight onto this dashboard, and this can technically be used to scope out and see and analyze the different demographics around those stores. So these were the 2 use cases that I wanted to show today, but I also want to walk you through a couple of spatial tools in the spatial tool palette. So far in both the use cases, we use the spatial match tool. So I'll come back to it. I won't stress on it so much. I'll come back to it in the end. So in the tool palette, we also have the trade area tool that lets us draw single or multiple trade areas around a single spatial point. And in case you're not aware, a trade area is nothing but a geographic area from which a business generates the majority of its customers. And here we have a couple of options to configure this tool. Here I've selected a 10-mile radius. Excuse me. And if you look at the browse tool, here is what a 10-mile radius around my store looks like. I can also create multiple trade areas like this. I can just give a comma and mention in the configuration window. So here 5 to 10 mile, 10 to 15, and 15 to 20. Again, for units, you have a couple of options. With the spatial package, you get the drive time engine. So across all these different tools, because I have the location insights data package installed, I'm now being presented with a couple of ways to calculate my drive time. In case you don't have the package, you'll still get to calculate the radius in miles and kilometers, but you won't see this option. I mean, you'll see it, but it's grayed out. And here are how my multiple trade areas look like. So between 5 to 10 mile radius, 10 to 15, and 15 to 20. So using the spatial match tool, now I can combine my trade areas and spatial points, and the results look like this. Here in this case, I'm combining it, I'm matching it with the trade area, which is for only 10 miles. So now I can understand or look at all the different customers who are within the 10-mile radius of my store. And these are the records that do not match, or these are the customers who are outside of the 10-mile radius of my store. So I've already mentioned this. Again, stressing one more time, there are a couple of ways you can calculate drive time isochrones in Alteryx. And in our previous example, we used the isochrone mapbox tool, but we also have the drive time generator tool that does the very same thing. And this comes with the location package add-on. And this is dead simple, stupid simple, straightforward. You select your drive time in minutes. You select the data set that you use to calculate the drive times. What is the grid that you want, size of the grid that you want for your isochrone? Select your input or units. And then here is your isochrone again, but this time in Alteryx instead of Tableau. I'll now move on to the spatial info tool. And using this tool, you can calculate areas. You can come up with centroid. You can look at the total number of data points in the data set. You can calculate the length. If you're doing a spatial line, then you can do calculate the length of the line in miles and kilometers. In this case, the total area of our trade area is 814 square kilometers, and we have around 100 different customers within that 10-mile radius. We can also find the nearest spatial objects to a spatial object using the find nearest tool. The configuration is somewhat similar to the spatial match tool, and in this case, it's simple. You configure both the spatial objects and give the maximum distance. So in this case, I'm giving a maximum distance of 5 miles. So I want to find all the customers who are within a 5-mile radius of my potential store. And using the map input tool, I'm just selecting a random point on my map. I mean, for demonstration purposes, it's random, but if you're a business, you have the address of the store that you are scoping out. You can input the address and select the store on your map, and then start doing your analysis. So here are all the customers who are within a 5-mile radius of my store, and here they are who are not. So beyond 5-mile radius, these are my customers. And I can select different maps. We have a ton. Finally, we can also find the distance between 2 points using the distance tool. Again, you can output distance, you can output drive time, because with the add-on, I have the drive time engine. So this is one other tool which lets me calculate the drive time distance. You can optimize the route by either time or distance. You can give what is the maximum of 45 minutes here. And I'm using the TomTom dataset on the back end to do this. Again, one last thing, as we have seen earlier, we can append the census data to any of our spatial outputs. In this case, I'm appending some demographics to my trade areas. This is again a multiple trade area, and to this, I'm appending some demographic information. So within the 15-minute radius, I'm looking at what is the percentage of Hispanic people, total female, and what is the total population of all these areas. So that is all the content I had for today. It's 12:45 and I can leave the last 15 minutes open for questions. If you do not have any questions, feel free to drop off. Mike and I will hang out here anticipating any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Amar. So we'll leave this time open for any questions. Feel free to just drop them in the Q&A window. Of course, a couple of things that I'll just share toward the end. Let me just share my screen, just so there are a couple of kind of key takeaways from today. So really just to recap, right? Some of the different ways that you can enable the folks, right, in your org, right, to get a deeper understanding of where your customers are, how to, right, optimize location based on, right, your use cases, right? If that's layering in demographic or buying behavior or business profile, and ultimately just giving you the tools to do that right within Alteryx Designer with your own data, and ultimately, right, work at the speed of business, right, for those questions, as opposed to, waiting on, getting that data, right, in hopeful fashion. So just two things, right? If you don't have a designer license today and you want to trial it out, by all means, we'll be sharing this link as well as a Spatial Analytics starter kit. And with that, if there aren't any questions, if you don't have a zinger for us right now, by all means, please feel free to follow up with us. But with that, if you're all set, you can, you're officially dismissed. We'll let you get on with the rest of your day, but don't hesitate to reach out to us going forward. If you're interested in, hey, do you think that this use case is applicable with, what Amar has been sharing today? We can certainly dive deep in with you to, get to the nitty-gritty of it. But appreciate everyone jumping on with us. And again, thank you for your patience just with the rough start with the bad invite there.
So really quick, here is what the Spatial Analytics starter kit looks like. You get 4 different workflows, and the entire idea behind these workflows is to show you how to use different spatial tools. So feel free to download them and reverse engineer these workflows. And some of these outputs are pretty cool. So I think, yeah, if you're interested in spatial, then get yourself a designer trial, download the Spatial Analytics starter kit, and I think you should be good to go. And also, if you have not heard about the weekly challenges, then Alteryx does a weekly challenge every week. And the idea is to give you a challenge in different verticals or different tool palettes, which you can solve using the tools. So check out the weekly challenges as well. And that way, you can get familiar with all the geospatial analytics stuff in Alteryx. Thank you.
All right, looks like we do have a question coming up. Where can we get the starter packs? So let me just share that link in the chat window here.
We will also follow up with a link in the email.
Yep.
The follow-up email.
So I'm going to share the general resource for all of them, because outside of spatial, there actually are a number of them there. So that link that I'm leading to in the chat window, hopefully everyone has access to that, but of course we'll also follow up with it after the fact as well. So you'll see a bunch on there from that link. So if you go to capabilities, you'll see the Spatial Analytics one, and I can also directly link that here as well. Any other questions with folks while we have you? All right. Well, I appreciate everyone. I hope you have a great rest of the day. We will send the recording out in the different resources listed. But with that, I hope you have a great rest of the day and don't hesitate to reach out with anything further. Take care, everybody.